Thank you. I'm here today to introduce you to the marimba. The marimba is not a big xylophone. Although it does look like a xylophone, and it happens to fall into the family of instruments that would be called xylophone, they're very different instruments. The xylophone that you see over to my left is about half the size of a marimba, so there certainly is a size difference, but that's not the only difference between the xylophone and the marimba. The xylophone and marimba have a different playing range. If you look at the keyboard of a piano, the marimba falls into the middle playing range of the piano. The xylophone would start above middle C and work towards the top end of the piano. The tuning of the instruments are very different. Without getting into the technical side of how the bars are tuned and that process, the marimba is tuned to the third harmonic, which means that it's going to have a more legato and warm sound. The xylophone is strong in the second harmonic, which means it's going to have a very staccato and bright sound. To look at the history of the marimba, it has its roots going back all the way to Asia, and it makes its way to Africa around the 13th to 14th century. The most prominent elements of the marimba develop in Africa, and that is the bars and the resonators on that instrument. More about that in a moment. From Africa, we travel to Central America in the 1600s, and the instrument expands in range and starts to take a very prominent role within that society. The prevalent countries are Chiapas and Honduras and Mexico and Guatemala, where this instrument tends to thrive. The instrument becomes very popular and holds a high esteem in society. It's a prestigious instrument. So the elaborate structure and detail in building the instrument and quality of sound improves at that time as well. In Mexico and Guatemala, we see the evolution of the marimba band. And the marimba band basically means that there are multiple players playing on the same instrument at the same time. In Mexico and Guatemala, we also see the marimba becoming the national instrument, so it holds a very important part of their society. The instrument makes its way to North America and the United States around 1900, and that's through special events and concerts and particularly world fairs. These Mexican and Guatemalan marimba bands come up to the United States and have a big impact on musical instrument manufacturers and also performers, and it gets the attention where it's now going to evolve in the United States. The first incarnation of the marimba was actually called a nabimba, and it had its roots with the Guatemalan and Mexican sound, but what was going to evolve into the instrument that you see in front of me now. By the 1930s, we see the most decadent period of the marimba in its construction. We see the finest rosewood being used, brass tubes for the resonators, mother-of-pearl inlay around the instrument, and gold plating on some of the highest-end instruments. By the 1950s, the marimba is popular in school and college programs and has become standard across the United States in music education. It makes its way across to Japan, where the evolution continues, and then, of course, globally, the instrument is widely accepted. The construction, I mentioned before, there were two very important elements to the marimba, and those are the resonators and the bars. Without them, we don't have the characteristic sound of this instrument. So the resonator is basically an acoustic amplifier, and it's there to increase volume of the bar. The bar will certainly resonate without that amplification, but it needs the amplification to get us to a performance volume so the instrument can actually be heard. So this is our greatest acoustic amplifier. The resonators also are perfectly tuned to the bars. They carry the exact volume of air needed to balance with the bar. If they're out of balance at all, the bar won't speak properly, it may sound dead, or it might not produce the volume or the tone that is needed. The bars themselves are made of rosewood, specifically Honduran rosewood. And there's rosewood that comes from all different parts of the world, from Africa, Brazil, Belize, Bali, India, and a variety of other places. It gets the name rosewood because of the color of the wood. That's not its scientific name. It is called Dalbergia stephanosi. But when you look at the color of the wood coming from different parts of the world, you'll see that it starts from a very blonde pink color all the way to a very deep plum color in some places. So it's a very attractive wood to work with. It's an exceptionally hard wood. It's got to take the beating of a mallet to play the instrument without cracking or breaking. The wood comes from Honduras, from very mountainous jungle regions. It's hard to access. The wood is very rare, and in fact, it's protected in a lot of countries because of its rarity. When the wood is cut down, you see a thick rim of bark around the tree, and that is to protect that very hard wood on the inside. The bark is stripped away, and then the wood is left out to dry for up to several years. We need the wood to be at the lowest moisture level in order for the wood to speak and resonate. For this reason, rosewood earns the nickname the wood that sings. When we get this wood all crafted into a bar and tuned perfectly with our resonator and on the instrument, then we can look at performing. This instrument is the most widely studied and performed instrument in the percussion inventory, and that is because it is our piano. What that means is that we can study all aspects of musicality on this instrument. We can focus on tone production and quality of sound. We can focus on phrasing and direction of musical lines, melodic and harmonic structure, and dynamic and rhythmic effect. All of these concepts together help to produce a quality percussion and musician. We take those elements and then we can apply them to any percussion instrument, but it all starts here with the marimba. I have some musical examples to demonstrate the resonant quality, particularly of the middle to low end of this instrument, but also some of the things that we can do with the instrument. This first one is with 2 mallets and demonstrates some of the ability to phrase on the marimba. With 4 mallets, we can take a more pianistic approach to the instrument and also introduce rolls or the chorale style of playing, which is unique to the marimba. This next example demonstrates 6 mallet playing, which also has that chorale element, but we're able to fill in and thicken up some of the chord structure. It also adds an element of independence that is challenging and interesting to the performer. Thank you. We have one more example of the marimba, and that is with that marimba band style that started in Guatemala and Mexico. And so that's with the UNLV Marimba Band. I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that you've learned something about the marimba and have an appreciation for this instrument now that you know more about it. Thank you very much.